Hello 7th graders, this is Miss White and today we're doing the Mid-Module 4 test review. This review and test are shorter than the previous reviews and tests we have done, so please make sure that you're following along and paying attention to every detail. Alright, so number 1. In New York, state sales tax rarely vary by county. In Allegheny County, the sales tax rate is 8%. A book costs $16.99 and a video game costs $49.99. Rounded to the nearest cent, how much more is the tax on the video game than the tax on the book? So what we need to do is find out what 8% of $16.99 and 8% of $49.99 is. So we can use the equation quantity equals percent times whole. Now, we know in our problem we are given the percent, and our percent is 8%. And it gives us the cost of the book and the video game. So that is the whole. So we have our whole for our book and our whole for a video game. These are going to be separate equations, so when we set them up, we're going to use our book first. So to find the quantity of the book which we want, we are going to use the percent, which is 8%, times the whole of our book, which is $16.99. Okay, and this is going to be for our book. Then for our video game quantity, we are going to take our percent, which is 8%, times our whole, which is $49.99. Now, before we calculate these into our calculator, we need to turn the percent into a decimal. 8% as a decimal is going to be 0.08. So now I have 0.08 times $16.99. Go ahead and get out your calculator and calculate this equation. All right, I got 1.3592. And then now we're going to calculate the quantity of the game. Again, we're going to turn our 8% into a decimal, and that's going to be 0.08 times $49.99. Go ahead and calculate this with your calculator. All right, I got 3.9992. Now, we know our quantities for both the book and the game. We want to round to the nearest cent, which is in the hundredths place. And how much more is the tax on the video game than the tax on the book? Because it's asking how much more, that means we're going to use subtraction. So I'm going to take my video game, which is 3.9992, and subtract it from the book, which is 1.3592. Go ahead and calculate this in your calculator. Okay, and the answer you should have got is 2.64. Now, is this rounded to the nearest cent? Yes, because we know that we have 64 cents and it is in our hundredths place. Now we need to make our 2.64 a dollar value. So it is $2.64 more for the tax of the video game than the book. Let's start with B. Using N, the variable N, to represent the cost of an item in dollars before tax, and T to represent the amount of sales tax in dollars for that item, write an equation to show the relationship between N and T. So T is going to represent the amount of sales tax in dollars for that item, and that's what we want to find. So T equals our tax rate times N. So what is our sales tax rate? Well, it is 8%. And how are we going to write 8% in decimal form? From A, we already know that 8% in decimal form is 0.08. So we have 0.08. And then N is going to represent the cost of an item in dollars before the tax. That is it. We are moving on to C. Using your equation, create a table that includes 5 possible pairs of solutions to the equation. Label each column appropriately. So when we're looking here, we know that we need to first create a table. So let's go ahead and do that. First, what we're going to do is label each column appropriately. So we are going to use one column for our N and one column for our T. Now remember, above we have T equals 0.08 N. So N represents the cost of an item, and T represents the amount of sales tax. All right, so when a cost of an item equals 0, what is the amount of sales tax? Well, above we're going to use our equation. So we are going to have 0.08 times 0. And we know that anything times 0 is going to give us 0. So that means our amount of sales tax when an item costs $0 is $0.00. All right, what about our next one? What if the cost of the item is 1? Now we're going to have 0.08 times 1. Well, anything times 1 is itself, so that's 0.08. So when a cost of an item is $1, that means that the amount of sales tax is going to be 8 cents. Now, if we have 0.08 times 2, that is going to give us 0.16. So when a cost of an item is $2, the amount of sales tax is going to be 16 cents. All right, by yourself, go ahead and try to find $3, $4, and $5. All right, you should have set up your equations as such, having 0.08 times 3, times 4, and times 5. So when you calculated this on your calculator, you would have gotten 0.08 times 3 is 0.24. So now we know that the cost of an item when it's $3, our amount of sales tax is 24 cents. Then we have 0.08 times 4, which is going to give us 0.32. So when a cost of an item is $4, it is 32 cents. And now we have 0.08 times 5, which is going to give us 0.4. If you want to put a 0 behind it to help you understand that that is 40, go ahead. Now we know when an item costs $5, the amount of sales tax is 40 cents. All right, for D, you're going to want to use this table to help you graph. D. Graph the relationship from parts B and C in the coordinate plane. Include a title and appropriate scales and labels for both axes. First, let's include a title and the appropriate scales and labels for both axes because these are points that could be missed easily, and so I want to go over them first. So we need to include a title. A title for this graph would be sales tax of an item. Now, does it have to be this exact same title? No, but it does need to have something to do with sales tax. Now, we need to label our axes. We have our x-axis and our y-axis. So, our x-axis from our table is going to represent N. N is the cost of an item. And our Y is going to represent T, which is the amount of sales tax. Now, we need to put in the appropriate scales. What that means is we need to look back at our table that we made and determine what is the best scales to use. So when we're looking at our x-axis, which is N, in our table, we go up by 1 every single time. So what I am going to do here is we're going to label 0, 0 first, okay, our origin. Then every 3 over, I'm going to label it as 1 so we can see it a little bit better. So here I have $1. Here I have $2. Now I have $3. And then $4. And finally our $5 right here. Okay. Now we need to label our y-axis. So we know our y-axis represents T, and T every time goes up by 0.08. So like I did for number 1, I'm going to use 0.08. I apologize, my dogs are gagging right now. I don't know, guys, I'm sorry. So we're gonna go up 3 like I did for 1, and we have 0.08. Then we're gonna go up another 3 and put our next value, which was 0.16. Go up another 3. I'm going to put 0.24. Go up my next 3 points, it's 0.32. And then finally, our last 3 is going to be 0.40. All right, I'm going to make these a little bit easier to see here. Okay. Here. Okay, great. Now we've done our labeling, we've made our title, and we have our scales. So now we need to look at our table and plot. So first we have 0, 0, and that is our origin. So we are going to plot our origin. Now we have 1 and 0.08. So I'm going to plot where those two meet. Then I have 2 and 0.16. So I'm going to plot there as well. Now I have 3 and that's 0.24. So I'm going to plot that. 4. Now I'm going to plot 0.32. And then finally 5 is where I'm going to plot 0.40. Okay, so there is my scale, and now I want to connect my plots here. Okay, I did the best I could. Oh, I guess I messed it up here. That's not good. There we go. And there is our graph. Now we're going to move on to E. E is a little refresher or kind of a review question from Module 1. E says, is the relationship proportional? Why or why not? If so, what is the constant of proportionality? Explain. So is this proportional? Is this graph proportional? Is the relationship proportional? Is the table proportional? Is the equation we wrote in B proportional? Yes. Yes, it is proportional. Okay. Because we know yes, it says if so, if it is, what is the constant of proportionality? Well, for our equation, which we're given in B, our equation is T equals 0.08n. 0.08 is our constant of proportionality. Okay, because every time we spend $1, it goes, our sales tax goes up 8 cents. That's our constant. For C, when we look at our table, we're going to have to use one of those formulas that we learned at the very, very beginning of the year when we find our constant. K equals y over x. Now, if we look at one of those plots from our table, which is in C, we can say, okay, our y, which is going to be our t, is going to be 0.08 over our x, which is n, and that's going to be 1. Well, anything divided by 1 is itself, so again, it gives us our constant of 0.08. Okay? Now for D, the reason why we know this is proportional is because we have a straight line that runs through the origin. Okay, on your test, what I am expecting is for you to answer whether or not the relationship is proportional and give me one of these reasons why you know it is.
And we're finally moving on to number 2. Amy is baking her famous pies to sell at the town fall festival. She uses 28 cups of flour for every 8 cups of sugar in order to make a dozen pies. Answer the following questions below and show your work. A. Write an equation in terms of F, representing the relationship between the number of cups of flour used and the number of cups of sugar used to make the pies. So we know that she uses 28 cups of flour for every 8 cups of sugar. Now we know that our ratio is going to be 28 to 8. And because both of these are even numbers, we can definitely simplify them. So the best number to simplify these by is going to be their greatest common factor. The greatest common factor between 28 and 8 is going to be 4. So now I know that 28 divided by 4 is going to give us 7, and 8 divided by 4 is going to give us 2. So now we know that for every 7 cups of flour, we have 2 cups of sugar. Now we want to write an equation to represent this. So our cups of flour equals 7 over 2 cups of sugar. So F equals 7 over 2 S. Now it says write the constant of proportionality as a percent. Explain what it means in the context of this situation. So like from number 1, what I talked about is when we have an equation, here is going to be our constant of proportionality. Here we have 7 over 2. And because it wants us to write it as a percent, that means out of 100. Now, to get 7 over 2 to be out of 100, what times 2 equals 100? Well, that's going to be 50. So I'm going to multiply 50 for my numerator and my denominator. So 7 times 50 is going to give us 350. Now because we're looking at this as a percent, and percent means out of 100, that our percent is going to be 350%. All right, so now that we know 350 is our percent, what does it mean in the context of this situation? Well, when we have the constant of proportionality, which in this case is 350%, it means that the amount of flour used to make the pies is 350% the amount of sugar used. All right, now C. To help sell more pies at the festival, Amy set a price for one pie at 30% less than it would cost at her bakery. At the festival, she posts a sign that reads, Amy's Famous Pies, only $9 per pie. Using this information, what is the price of one pie at the bakery? So let's think about our whole cost here. We're going to use that as X. Now, X means that we have only one of them. So if you want to put a 1 in front of them to help you with that, that's great. So we're going to take our whole value minus the 30%. So when we have 30%, how do we write that in decimal form? Well, that's going to be 0.3. And if you want to add a 0 behind it, you can. So now we have 0.30x. Now, we know the total amount of our pie is $9, so we're going to equal this to 9. Now we want to combine our like terms. We know that we have like terms because we have x and x. So with your calculator, go ahead and type in 1 minus 0.30. Okay, the answer you should have got is 0.70. And because, again, we're adding like terms, we are going to keep our x. So now we have 0.70x equals 9. Now, we want to figure out the cost of this discounted pie, which is going to be x. So our goal now is to get x by itself. Because here I see that this is a multiplication problem,
The opposite of multiplication is going to be division. So we're going to divide both sides by 0.70. If you would rather multiply by the multiplicative inverse, you can do that as well. So when we have a value divided by its value, we get 1. And so now we're left with 1x, which is what we want. And now we have 9 divided by 0.70. Go ahead and in your calculator, calculate that formula for me. Okay, so now we know that x equals 12.85. Now I do realize that when we calculate this, we get a longer number, but we only want to use to our cents since we're talking about money, and our cents ends at the hundredths place. So now, what is the price of 1 pie at the bakery? Well, the price of 1 pie at the bakery is going to be $12.85.